So go ahead, Sheridan.
Yeah, hi. Thank you for having me on today. I appreciate it. I had the chance to work with Jackie, so I know what she's doing with all of you is amazing. So of course I said yes. I feel like I come from maybe a little bit different vantage point than you might be used to hearing from. I think that sometimes speech therapists get stuck in a room working on artic or their focus maybe isn't early literacy or oral language in the schools, but I feel like I've been on a mission for a while to kind of change that narrative that we can do a lot with push in and focus a lot on the language components and do that early so that students have a chance and we're not playing a lot of catch up later. So I can't wait to share this work with you. I have to tell you, it's one of my first times presenting this particular in this particular way. So bear with me. If you have questions, feel free to drop them. I feel like I left enough room for us to have good discussions too. So I expect that you are going to engage with me as well. So to get us on the right foot today, I would just like you to focus on maybe that foundational. This is basically what Jackie said was the foundational pre-K through 3 learner. And there's something we can really change to get on the right trajectory. If we get this part right early on, I feel like it just makes such a huge impact in just the overall student, the overall human, their ability to function. So, yeah, it has reading and language outcomes, but there's the whole child is really what we're looking at here. So my background is I'm a speech pathologist. I adopted a while ago an executive functioning specialist, and I founded SD Therapy. So I've been a consultant for a long time. I always say, I'm almost hitting 20 years of this work, but I had school in there too. So I am definitely way far into my career. And one of the things that I noticed early on was just that there was this huge intersection between what speech was doing and what was happening in the classroom. So, strengthening oral language is not just about reading, right? It's about building uh, strong thinkers. That's the part that I really want us to focus on today. Is the cognition piece of it. I think sometimes when we're talking about language, the cognition piece gets missed. And today is about building strong thinkers. So, strong thinkers are more regulated learners and kids who can navigate life. But here's the kicker, we only have this very short, powerful window from preschool to third grade to really have them learn this and strengthen these skills before the gaps get too wide. So today it's not about just talk more at circle time. I think that's something that we hear a lot when we're trying to add more language to the classroom. But it's about how oral language is tied directly to the brain's executive control systems and what that means for real classroom practice. So think about, I always want you to think of a student. So think of a student you had in mind and think about the challenges they face. And if it's organization, focus, self control, something else, maybe it's phonics. But I know for me, when I see students, there's usually an underlying cognitive component, whether they are, directly seeing me or not. Sometimes it looks like behavior, sometimes it looks like language, sometimes it looks like reading. But I want you to think about that,
Going to
student.
special ed.
What? I didn't hear that. Jackie, did you?
It's
Oh,
just somebody who has on their
okay.
microphone.
Okay. So, the other way I got really interested in this work, I think it's good to hear like how this came about for me, because it's not an area of focus for all speech therapists, but that kids that have been in speech therapy forever, like they have an IEP for the last 7 years. And for the speech person, they can produce the sounds. I feel like teachers are always coming to us, administrators, whoever, and they're like, they're not making any progress. But when they're in your room, they sound great. They know that speech, they need to use the correct sounds, and then they go out in the real world and they can't make the sound. So that generalization of a new skill is a self-direction skill, and that's exactly what we're talking about when we're talking about executive functioning. So I'll say EF maybe today as well, just to shorten. So when we add EF intervention, the generalization of sounds usually takes off. So I think that's just a really good example of how you can apply this, like I said, to all kids, not just strugglers, for sure. Yeah, distracted for sure. Did anyone else? Confidence, yes. I'll look at a few of these. Self-regulation consistently turns up as the lowest scoring. I can't read all that because I'm on my phone, but self-esteem, yes, so many things. So I want to set the stage for the science, but I want to tell you what I want you to learn by the end of the session. And one is define oral language in terms that connect directly to executive function and early success. Number two is explain the science behind why oral language matters so much for the pre-K to 3 learner. And then three is apply practical strategies that we weave language into your classroom in small groups and tier 2 interventions. And then four is collaborate with your intervention team to ensure that language support is integrated and not just siloed. And I'll talk about this later, but this is really the roadmap. So if you're taking notes, this would be the one of the most important things is define oral language, explain the science behind it, apply practical strategies, and then collaborate with your intervention teams to ensure that it's getting integrated across the board. Okay, so we'll go to the next. What is oral language? And I think that is, let's start by unpacking what it really means. Many people think it's vocabulary, like how many words a child knows, but it's so much more layered than that. Oral language is the foundation for thinking, learning, and self-regulation. So I'm going to say that again because it's such an important point, and it's oral language is the foundation for thinking, learning, and self-regulation. I really like to think of it as the internal operating system that runs a child's brain. And if that system is weak, even brilliant kids struggle to follow directions, plan, express themselves. And if it's strong, everything in the classroom, everything in their life becomes so much easier. Reading, writing, problem solving, you even see it in relationships. So the core components of oral language are receptive language, which is nonverbal, understanding what it's said and following multi-step directions, so making sense of the context. So I like to give examples, and receptive language is what we talk about as nonverbal. So understanding what's said, following directions, multi-step directions, and making sense of context. So the example would be like, put your backpack on the hook, get your math folder, and sit down. A child with weak receptive language might only catch that first part, and then we think they're being defiant, or they're not following the directions, or they don't know how to follow it, which is probably true. Okay, and expressive language is using vocabulary and sentence structure to share thoughts and needs. An example is a student who knows the answer but can't get the words out. They might look disengaged, but it's a language access issue. So thinking about, they can't find the words to utilize, so they appear distracted. I think that was one of the words you guys used, but disengaged. And then narrative skills is telling a story with a beginning and middle and end. And most of this is, I'm sure all of you know, but a fluent reader who can't summarize a story is missing that narrative scaffolding that we talk about. And then inferencing, making sense of implied meaning. So if I say, it's chilly in here, the child needs to infer that I want the window closed. So those inferences, we are asking them to make a lot, and a lot of kids cannot do that. So pragmatics is using language socially, just social language. And an example of that is constantly interrupting peers may look like defiance, but it's often just pragmatic weakness. So the science integration, here's where the research really backs what we see in classrooms. And I have a newfound love for this Karen Dudick Brannon. She has a really good podcast out. I think it's called The De Facto Leaders, and it talks a lot about how to lead in a school and how she comes from a speech background and just that how strong that executive functioning piece is in interventions and in classrooms. And so her work on syntax development predicts that later reading comprehension and executive function, strong syntax means better planning and self-talk. So she really teaches how executive function can be integrated from a top-down level, that it's not just the speech therapist, just school-wide. Yeah, syntax is, yes. I'm going to give you a really good explanation here because it's not just, I'm going to give you her explanation because it's not just the way the sounds go together. I feel like that's normally what we say syntax is. I'm actually going to find it for you here. I talk about it later, but I'll go into a little more detail on those. But I wanted let me actually find it for you. Okay, so I actually wanted to give you this definition, so I'm glad you brought that up. It's the set of linguistic skills that enables us not only to put words together to express our thoughts, but to understand how to use a vocabulary word correctly in a sentence, formulate grammatically correct sentences in oral and written language, pay attention to relevant words in a sentence so we understand the message, and sequence what we're saying or writing so others understand, comprehend, and answer questions. So I love her work because she's saying we've kind of missed the boat. We focus so much with language on WH questions and grammar and those specific pieces. And part of her research was really like we're really missing the boat that syntax and executive functioning are really the key areas to, and then those other things kind of come naturally. So we are always asking, like, why can't they answer a WH question? You know, like they must have major language issues, which can be true. And maybe it is oral language and vocabulary, but putting the words together for meaningful language is I think the most important thing. Does anyone have questions about that? I went into a big tangent there. Anyone? Okay, so Charles Holm, you guys have studied these people. So oral language is the strongest predictor of reading comprehension in early grades. I think that's true as well. And then looking from an equity lens, you'd want to look at children speaking African American or other dialects are often misidentified as deficient. And then we set up gaps in literacy and expectations. And then oral language weakness can be hidden, and that's Katz and Kami, when decoding is strong, but emerge later in comprehension and writing. So one of the patterns I just wanted you to notice and why I brought out this research is, oh, I can't read that. Jackie, can you? The chat? I can't read the chat.
Oh, I just noted in there that Dr. Nell, who has worked with us before, refers to the work of Charles Hume and Hugh Katz very often. Just
Okay.
bringing them back to remember we talked about this a year ago.
Well, and I think one of the patterns I noticed, I feel like that's sort of our job, like as you know, as people that work in early intervention and reading and language, is that oral language is really cognitive, right? It's about thinking with words, not just speaking them. And I think that's just like one of the most important takeaways from everyone that we talk about with the science is that it's about the cognitive piece becomes so important. So think about that student. Like, how many of your students can read the words, but then can't explain them? That I feel like is one of the biggest indicators. Like, you can do just a quick screen on someone where they can read the words, but they can't explain them to you, or they can't even explain what they read. I think that happens so often. And so there's a lot of reasons why that happens, but a lot of it is because we are so focused on getting them to read, but then actually explaining what they read or explaining the words is really difficult for them. Okay, and then just because it's funny, I used handout 2 before I used handout 1, so I called this one here building the skills that drive learning, handout 2, so you can all kind of laugh at me a little bit about that. And I just want you to have it by your side. I'll review it later, but just gives you kind of a preview of the skills like that EF language link. And so you kind of look there, it's working memory, is holding directions, self regulation, telling themselves to wait or stop. Flexibility is shifting between rules. So there's so many good examples on there, and I definitely will walk you through it later, but I just wanted you to keep this in mind. It might be something good to reference like as I'm talking about this. Okay, so have it handy, but don't dive into too much yet. Okay, so thinking about your own classroom. I already said this, but how many students can read but not comprehend? What are the areas they struggle the most with? And we want to bring it back. Is it receptive? Is it expressive? Is it narrative? Is it inferencing? Is it social language? Maybe just think about that for a little bit when you're thinking about your own classroom. What area do you think kids struggle with the most? And I can't read the chat, but maybe someone else can.
They were just asking for the handouts, and I just put them in.
Oh, perfect. Okay.
And then we're at, just for time, we're at 4:20.
Thank you. Okay, so why oral language matters so much is this working memory. You can only hold instructions if you process them in language. Self-regulation, kids use language internally to tell themselves to stop. Flexibility is really shifting tasks requires verbal scaffolding. And that's why a child who looks so bright and capable, even if they're reading on grade level, can still struggle with the organization or still have behaviors. And I think so many times when I'm asked to observe that the missing link really is the oral language. I'm going to kind of skip through. I had some more information on the science, but I'm going to kind of skip through some of that. And let's just bring it together. So here's what we know for sure. Why oral language is cognitive, okay? And we talked a little bit about syntax, but you have the definition, but many students catch on to syntax on their own through exposure in their everyday lives. But exposure really just isn't enough for a lot of students. So we really have to give them explicit, intensive,
Sorry.
Yeah, I went through that. We can go through that.
Yep,
Yeah.
I'm moving.
Perfect. Thank you.
Am I where you want me to be?
Yeah, you're close. That was a handout, so that's good. And I can't see them. Okay, so why syntax is so important is because consistent, repetitive, strategic practice over time will make it develop automatically. But what we're seeing in so many classrooms really is they're not getting it on their own. So there really does need to be this collaboration with I think speech, early intervention teams, special ed, more of the STAT meeting sort of experience to make sure that they can start to connect ideas, understand how words work, start to self-talk, all those things that are linked with oral language. Because what we've found and what the science tells us is that oral language is really the strongest predictor of early reading success. So if you want to, you can look at that handout too again, because we'll look at it a little bit closer. And working memory depends on internalized language to hold instruction. And then inhibition depends on words. And you can see like I'm utilizing, words like wait, stop, think first. Flexibility depends on having language to describe shifting rules. And planning depends on sequencing language, and sentences near steps. So wouldn't you say when you look at this, you're like, oh, I see these things in my classroom all the time? But I feel like, and I think I've mentioned this, but why oral language gets missed is really this. There's three things about why oral language gets missed. And I think it's overemphasis on phonics. Now, I feel like that might not be the best way to describe it because, of course, I know the science of reading, integrity, they're all great programs. I think we're doing so many amazing things that are heavy on phonics and for good reason. But I feel like what happens when we get so focused on phonics is that sometimes oral language and this cognitive piece gets sidelined. And I think I was like, I'm going to get so much pushback on this. I think phonics is critical. But when early instruction leans so heavily on decoding, we lose the space for oral language practice. That's what I see happening. I think especially since COVID, there's been a shift. So many more kids are needing this direct instruction. They need to be taught things that they came in with as base skills before. And here's a good example. I worked with a first grader who could decode anything on paper. She was a star reader, but when asked to explain the main idea, she would just freeze. So the gap wasn't attention or motivation, it was syntax and narrative. So without those, comprehension and execution or executive function suffer. So think about your students that maybe can decode, but they can't explain the meaning. I think that's one of the biggest red flags that I see is they can read, but they have no idea. When it gets to those higher order, higher level thinking, they can't do it. Okay, so there's another reason, the second reason why oral language gets missed
Oops, I keep going
is
back.
that's okay.
Am I on the slide where you want me to be, Sheridan?
I don't know. I can't even go ahead and go forward. It's okay. I should have done my own slides.
This one talks about equity.
Yeah.
And then it's common questions we might get. So
Okay. We'll just stay there for a second.
All right.
Okay, so another reason is often unintentionally we're language light in a classroom and not it's a time issue, right? So I'll observe a kindergarten class where story time is all teacher talk, or students never really practice narrating, predicting, retelling, and without that interaction there's no opportunity to build syntax or build self-regulation. So too much teacher talk instead of the interactive dialogue, limited back and forth conversation, and really unintentionally. I think that's the biggest piece. Like I didn't want to like get a lot of pushback like we're already doing this. I mean, I think that it's happening. I just think that we definitely there's work that we could do in order to I don't know, make it better, in order to just make it part of our habit to think about these things.
I think that one of the biggest things that came out of the learning series last year was all of us looking at our practices and saying we could do way better with wait time. We could do way better with sentence stems to build syntax. We could do way better with letting the kids talk more and have us to talk less.
Yeah, doesn't that just feel true? I mean, because we have such an urgency to get the test scores and just there's so much they need to learn that when we talk about play learning a lot because that is something that really has not gone by the wayside, but definitely there's less time for that. And I think, yeah, just thinking about those ways that you can embed, teaching them the words to use. Think about the words to use. Think about the wait time. Think about talking to themselves, if that makes sense. It's really the language around the thinking. It's hard to describe, right? Like when I first was doing this work, I was like, it's really hard to describe it. That's why examples, I think, are so imperative. Okay, so a third reason is fragmented teams, and I don't think it's anyone's fault, but too often speech pathologists, teachers, behavior special, we all work in silos and not be just time. It's just a time element. We don't have as much time as we need. And so language needs are really addressed separately instead of integrating them into the student's day. I think this is particularly true for the self-talk, for the following directions. Like if I'm going to work on language for somebody in a school, usually it's very clear that they have grammar and WH questions. And I think it kind of stops there sometimes. And I think I can say that as a generalization because I've been doing this a long time. But I'm going to give you an example. I've seen kindergarten teams dramatically reduce behavior referrals when the SLP embedded language goals into behavior plans. Instead of writing non-compliant, the student was taught scripts and cues first, like this. First we listen, then we do. I mean, it's just something so simple to add a script like that. First we listen, then we do. And within weeks, behavior referrals dropped. So it's just a really good example of how you can apply this. Does anyone have any questions for me?
They're quiet.
They are quiet. Well, I'll just go into why oral language gets missed sometimes. And I think it's oftentimes kids with oral language delays sometimes look defiant, inattentive, or unmotivated. So they're receptive, or to me, their receptive language or their working memory limits what they can do, even if they really want to comply. Does that make sense? Do you guys need an example?
No, I don't know.
Okay. I'm sure we've seen that. Someone refuses to follow directions, right? When really he just can't process the 2 or 3 steps. That they don't have the internal dialogue to even hold on to that. So the common questions we might hear related to that, I feel like I get a lot of these questions is, we don't have time to embed language goals in every classroom routine. Like, how do we start? And the thing that I always say is start with just one daily routine, like snack or lining up, any sort of transition, because small consistent changes in the classroom, you'll see there'll be such a huge ripple effect. And isn't oral language therapy just for SLPs? Every adult, and I think one of the things that's so powerful is when every adult is modeling, expanding on what they are saying, and scaffolding language. So the SLP usually brings the strategy, but I think it's the team that really amplifies it because you're just there hands-on so much more. And then I think there's a third one, and how do we convince administration to include the SLP input in Tier 1 planning? And honestly, it's shared the data. So show that the syntax gaps connect directly to reading comprehension and behavior referrals. The return on investment is fewer referrals and better outcomes. And I have a lot of data related to this, but that takes way too long in a short speech like this.
Should I go to the next one?
Yep. Well, I think that was that one.
That was the one. There's a PDF of the slide deck in the file that I shared, friends.
Yeah.
Okay, dual lens.
Okay, so let's look at, well, let's look at tier 1 and tier 2 integration, just because it's where transformation happens. So
Oh,
when
do
we
I go
treat,
back?
go ahead and leave it here. We'll treat
Okay.
oral language as the foundation. We don't just improve reading or behavior, we give students the scaffolds they need for thinking and learning. So language plus executive function equals stronger behavior, stronger academics, stronger kids. Okay. So let's look more closely at working memory. I think we can go forward a little bit.
There we
we're
are.
yeah, working memory. Okay. So this is the ability to hold and manipulate information in your mind. And for children, this skill is tied directly to oral language. So a kindergartner is told, clean up your crayons, wash your hands, and get your folder. If they can't internally rehearse that sequence with language, they'll often stop after step 1. But when we give them scripts, like first I clean up, then I wash my folder, then I wash my hands, and then I get my folder, they start to succeed. So working memory isn't just a brain skill, it's a language scaffold. Do you guys feel like you've heard it that way before?
Mhm.
Yeah. Okay. So the next one is inhibition. So oral language is the bridge. Children need internal words to hold themselves back. So an example is a child reaches to grab a toy from a peer. If they can say to themselves, I'm frustrated, but I can wait my turn, that inner language becomes the brake pedal for behavior. So think about this. Without those words, it's nearly impossible for them to pause. Any
Hmm.
questions on that? Yeah, like one of the things I'll do, I think this is just like a really good mini tip, is to teach simple scripts. I wait, I listen, then I do. I wait, I listen, then I do. And really embed these in their daily routine so they start to internalize them. Okay, our next one is executive function and action, cognitive flexibility. So this is shifting between tasks or adapting to new rules. So an example is a student is happily drawing, then asked to move to math. Without strong language, the shift feels abrupt and overwhelming. But with the scaffolds, I'm done drawing, now I'm ready for math, the transition is smoother. So the narrative and sequencing skills give kids the bridge between the activities. Don't you think, like, I feel like so much of this is based on transitions, and I think they're
Mhm.
just so hard for some kids. Okay, the next one is
Self-regulation.
self-regulation. Yes. I don't know what I did there. Self-regulation.
There is a question in the chat,
Yes, go
Sheridan.
ahead.
Can you speak to how this relates or interacts with a student that has diagnosed ADHD?
Yeah, I feel like those are the kids, right? That they have such trouble with this. Um, and and one of the things I'll say is, like, I think speech therapists are one of the best people that are trained on this, because the ADHD is like they don't have the language in their cognitive repertoire to even pause or to wait or to uh, transition to the next activity. Does that make sense? And so they have so much trouble managing. Oh, go ahead, Jackie. What'd you say?
I just said the same tools that we use with older kids who are diagnosed ADHD are what we're talking about here with building it from the beginning with preschool students. Um,
Yes.
you give them the language, rehearse the language.
Yeah, I feel like it's actually just practice, right? It's they have to embed the language, otherwise um they can't ever regulate. So I feel like it's a cognitive thing, but that honestly it's a language. You have to have the words for it. And so that's, I think, why they go so hand in hand. Like, has anyone ever had their speech therapist work on executive functioning skills or the language behind them?
Mhm.
Yeah, just have people?
I see some nods
Yeah,
and
I just
yeses.
think it's so important. So, sorry, I've got to self regulation. It's the ability to manage emotions, attention, and energy, and it relies on words. So, a child who can internally say, I'm upset, but I can take a deep breath and count to 5, has a tool for calming down. Without that vocabulary or those scripts to themselves, their internal dialogue regulation is much harder for them. So, when we give students language for feelings, coping strategies, and self talk, we aren't just helping their behavior, we're wiring the brain for regulation. So, can you think of a phrase that maybe you've taught students to help them self regulate?
I've taught the box breathing,
Oh, yeah.
that they talk themselves through the whole box breathing
Yeah, that's so
thing.
good.
Yeah. When you see kids, like, they're talking to themselves. Sometimes their inner voice is quiet, sometimes it's an outer voice, but it's they're using their internal language. It's kind of funny, but it's also like they're really doing it. Like, they're talking themselves through this hard moment.
Yes, they are. And it's just so key to how we run the classroom and like even thinking about the language behind it. So if you look at that, I have this handout here, ways to build oral language before age 8. And I think it's good to just have it for yourself all the time. It's like model rich vocabulary and context. So use advanced words in everyday conversation. That zones over. You guys are bringing up so many good ones. And then the second is building narrative skills through storytelling. So practice sequencing and explaining events to strengthen memory and planning. So instead of saying, I went to school, we try to expand. First, I ate breakfast. Then I got on the bus. And after that, I had math class. Finally, I ate lunch. So we just tried to get them to build their narrative by asking them to, we would model, but asking them direct questions as well. And then encouraging self-talk and solving language model aloud how to think through a task or challenge. And I feel like, I think teachers can do this, but I see like one of the ways I see is like a support people do this a lot. Like this tower is leaning, I will put a bigger block at the bottom. They're like always talking through what they're doing. And then embed vocabulary and movement and play. So when teaching the word squishy, touch Play-Doh and squeeze it. See how it changes shape. Say, this Play-Doh feels squishy. So it just seems like so elementary, but it's just so huge in the context of language. Okay, go ahead. I think it's important too. Like we can coach kids on this, but I feel like one of the most important things about this work is teaching adults this too. So we want to teach the paras, we want to have the speech people be modeling this for them in their classroom. That's why I'm such a huge uh, proponent of push in with speech therapists because I think so much of their what we know can be modeled and then the other adults in the classroom can model it as well. So I didn't want to miss that. Coach the adults, not just the kids. When we train really the adults to expand, model, and scaffold language, every child benefits. So some of these examples I've seen are ask them what happens next, add one more detail, stuff like that. So I want to pause and I want you to think about these 5 ways that we talked about. And I feel like I'm okay. We don't need the science, the connection.
Do we have a list of the 5 ones on a?
Yeah, we do. It's 4 on our, it's actually 4 on our ways to build the oral language.
Oh, there we go.
Yep. So we talked about that. I just gave a lot more examples here. I don't need to do that though. Okay, so going to the next, what does your next slide say? Sorry about that, you guys.
Practical takeaways.
Okay. You can go forward. I already talked about that.
Okay. What early intervention should look
Yeah, we talked
like?
about that too.
Okay. We're going to keep going. We talked about syntax,
We did.
the cognitive edge lens.
Yeah. Maybe just talk about that because I feel like
Yeah.
that is that's a good place to start. So, okay, so basically like how we frame early intervention, and I talked about this a little bit on like training your staff, having a cognitive rich or language rich classroom. But I feel like these principles are really used to just how we actually activate this, how we frame it early intervention. Like this actually does work. And so that's why I wanted to share this piece with you. So, activation, embedding language opportunities so kids can practice self talk and strategy application. So activation flow, connecting routine to goals. So practice where it feels natural, not like an add-on. Because I think that's where I see that teachers will get frustrated is because it doesn't feel natural. It feels like an additional thing for them to do. So really this activation, finding flow, and then integrating, we have to ensure that the SLP teachers, interventionists collaborate on one cohesive plan unit. And I think that gets to be really tricky with time, but it can be done. And then small daily strategies compound into big executive function growth over time. So, an example is a teacher adds one open ended question per transition, a para models sequencing language during snack. The SLP layers in syntax prompts during circle. And then these tiny shifts create momentum that carries across the day. And that's really where the executive function and plus oral language equals a whole child plan.
Um, Years ago when I worked at Head Start, one of the things that we as a staff did is these are the ways that we talk to children so that they can learn to talk to us.
Yeah. That's such a good way to say that. Yeah, like I think we can talk about this example. Like a preschool student struggled to follow group directions and often interrupts during circle time, right? So the intervention plan looked like this. The teacher embedded prompts like, let's tell our plan for centers today. And then the SLP modeled um, the multi-step directions scaffolded during the um, time. And then the paraprofessional cued internal self-talk. Like first we listen, then we take out our folder. So you can see like when everyone's working together, it really works well. And I feel like after several weeks, this particular student for sure showed better attention, fewer interruptions, and improved sequencing skills. And I feel like because I'm a speech therapist, it's good to add that it's not about adding like more minutes to their IP or more time to their therapy sessions. It's really about that integration of executive functioning and language scaffolds into the daily routine. And doesn't it seem like we do it naturally, but I just feel like it's getting um we're moving away from it, I think, and I feel like it's really impacting kids. You can go to the next slide.
So we have a mini case example, and then we're at about 10 minutes left. So I'd really love
Yep.
to make sure we get to that thing at the end because that's going to be their action items.
Yeah, you can go past that. I just summarized it.
Okay. I think you talked about this. Start
Yep,
small,
I did
1 to
that.
2 routines,
Yep, I did that. And we
practical
did that.
takeaways. Yep.
I think we can just go into the home stretch here. Like, let's do that.
Okay.
So,
Here we go.
so I feel like, yeah, there we go. This is the action steps, your quick wins. So this is where we shift really from understanding to action. So think about like what this is for is really to get you to look closely at your daily routines and where are there rich opportunities for oral language, and replace low talk activities like worksheets and silent centers with high talk interactions. So maybe you would swap out a silent reading warm up with a partner, turn and tell about the story, things like that. And then number two is integrate executive functioning language cues. So pair oral language with executive functioning prompts. So tell me what you'll do first. Walk me through your plan. What could you try next? And we're giving examples there of initiation, planning, cognitive flexibility. And we use these cues consistently across the staff so students hear and practice them often. Like I'm saying something the same as Jackie's saying it, as the pair is saying it. And then priming, practice and review. Give a quick preview of what's ahead. That's priming. Practice is model and guide during real activities. And review is reflect together on what worked and what to add. Any questions about what you have to do? So it's really designed to be a take-home action tool,
Yeah.
not a reminder.
I'll explain a little more on that. So, if you joined the learning series last year, we did a new topic each time. This year, we'll be discussing a topic and then giving you items like this, something you can act upon tomorrow and try for 2 weeks. And then we'll come back and you'll get to join a role-alike discussion. If you're a kindergarten teacher, you can be with other kindergarten teachers. If you're a special education teacher, you can be with other special education teachers. And so you're going to work on this, try some stuff out, take some notes, email me or Kim or anybody from our team if you need some more direction, and then you'll have real life experience to bring to the role alike discussion when we meet again in 2 weeks. And because we're asking you to do something in between and then come to another hour discussion on this, there's 2 PDUs beyond what you're going to get today. But we know that this model will be better for your learning, and it will be more effective for you to implement things in your classroom that we're learning here. So you have the handout in the folder, and so just kind of go through these 3 steps. Think about where you want to put this in. If you're on here with somebody else who's on your team and in your district, work together and have discussions about that. And always call or email us if you need further information on that between now and the next time we meet, which is 2 weeks from now.
All right. So should I go ahead and close?
Yeah, I think.
Okay. Yeah,
Ooh,
I'm skipping a few of those to the end.
yeah.
Okay, so like when we close, I just want you to remember when we give kids words, we give them the power to think critically, plan intentionally, regulate themselves, and lead their own learning journey. And that's really why it's so critical. So that really is the work of our early intervention, and why oral language plus executive functioning together from day one is really a commitment to seeing the whole child. So I think when we plant these seeds, there is usually a ripple effect across, you know, their lifetime, not just their reading, not just their language, not just their grades, but it really helps them be better learners too. Okay, so thank you so much. Does anyone want to say anything or ask any questions?
My
No.
computer just is froze, so
Well,
hopefully I can get out of here.
they'll have the long PowerPoint too. I probably could have made it a lot less slides now that I went through it. Thank you so much, everyone.
I think I'm stopped sharing. I'm going to go ahead and put the feedback in there, and we're here. So go ahead and ask more questions. However you want to do that, you just turn your mic off and ask. All right, here comes the feedback. And you go ahead and open that. Once you have it, you don't have to stay on. You can take your time, log off, and answer that. Remember to grab your PDU certificate link in the feedback response. So once you fill that out, Google will say you responded, and there will be a link in there that you'll need to grab. Sheridan, do you want to share what area you work in, so that if anybody here would like to contact you or work with you, they could do that?
Sure. I'm open for questions anytime or collaboration. I work actually, I live in Fort Peck. I'm looking at the lake right now. So I'm based in Glasgow, Montana, and I have a private practice called SDC Therapy Inc. And yeah, I'm starting my 20th year. Crazy. So you can contact me. You can give them my email address. You can drop
Okay.
that if you want. It's Sheridan@SheridanCotrell.com.
Sheridan, I think you know my friend Haley Mangy, because when you were saying a few things, I was like, that sounds familiar. Yeah.
I do know her. I love her.
Okay. Yeah. Yep.
Where are you located, Marie?
I'm in Ledger, but I'm like her son's godmother. We're just very close family friends. Yes. Yeah.
Good. Well,
Very
nice
cool.
to meet you.
You too, Sheridan.
I will say, if you follow Sheridan on Facebook, you will be motivated, whether you want to be or not.
Yeah, it's such an interesting connection how I started coaching people in this executive functioning, planning, time, communicate, how you communicate. I started to see a parallel between what I was working on at school and between what I was coaching women on and in my coaching. So yeah, it's been a really fun journey to see the parallel of the two things too. So yeah, do follow me, Jackie. Thanks for the plug.
Well, and also her kids are beautiful and talented and involved, and it's nice to see the pictures of them out doing the things.
Thank you. I only have 2 kids left at home though. That's weird. All right. I'm out of here, huh?
Thank
Jackie?
you.
Yeah.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you so much, Sheridan. I'll be in touch.
Sounds good. Bye.